Chivalrous Maiden is a piece from the collection of classical Chinese short stories, Strange Stories from a Chinese Studio, also known as Liaozhai Studio, written by the Qing Dynasty novelist Pu Songling. The chivalrous maiden, Mui, is the only female character who remains steadfast in her ideals and responsibilities, resisting the advances of the male protagonist. She eventually chooses to set out on a journey alone. In Nanjing, there was a scholar named Gu, knowledgeable and talented, skilled in both writing and painting, yet his family lived in extreme poverty. Due to his elderly mother, Gu remained by her side, supporting their livelihood by selling his artworks. At the age of 25, Gu was still unmarried. Living opposite his house was an empty dwelling where an old lady and a young girl resided. As there were no men in their household, nobody knew their background. One day, Gu returned home unexpectedly and encountered the young woman leaving his mother's room. She appeared to be around 18 or 19, exquisitely beautiful and graceful beyond compare. When their eyes met, the young woman did not avert her gaze, though her demeanor remained stern and imposing. After her departure, Gu questioned his mother about the encounter. She said, "The girl who just came is from the neighboring house. She borrowed scissors and a ruler from me. She mentioned having only a mother, no other family. Though she does not seem like someone from a poor family, when I asked her why she isn't married, she said it's because she takes care of her elderly mother. Tomorrow, I visit her mother and subtly suggest the idea of forming a relationship. If they don't demand high conditions, we can marry and provide for her mother." The next day, Gu's mother visited the girl's house. She discovered that the girl's mother was a deaf, elderly woman, and their home lacked even basic provisions. When asked how they managed to survive, they replied that the daughter worked as a seamstress. Gu's mother cautiously broached the idea of a potential union, and the old lady seemed agreeable. However, the daughter remained silent, indicating her reluctance. Gu's mother did not press further and returned home. After considering the situation, she shared her thoughts with Gu, saying, "Could it be that the girl finds our family too poor? She is serious, never smiling or talking. Although she's as charming as a plum blossom, her temperament is as cold as ice. Truly a peculiar person." Mother and son harbored suspicions, but the matter was left unresolved. One day, while Gu was painting at one end of the house, a young man approached, requesting a painting. The young man was handsome, but had a frivolous demeanor. He claimed to be from a neighboring village. From then on, he visited every few days, gradually becoming more comfortable around Gu, engaging in casual conversations. Gu hugged him, and he didn't strongly object. This marked the beginning of a more intimate relationship between them. As time passed, their connection deepened. One day, the young man saw the girl passing by and watched her as she walked away, remarking to Gu, "This girl is stunningly beautiful. Yet her expression is incredibly intimidating." Later, Gu entered his mother's room, who said, "The girl came to borrow rice and mentioned they haven't eaten for a day. She's filial and her family is extremely impoverished. We should help them a little." Gu, following his mother's instructions, took a bushel of rice to their house and relayed his mother's message. The girl remained, offering no words of gratitude. From then on, she frequently visited Gu's home, observing his mother sewing clothes or making shoes. She often lent a hand, assisting with household chores, resembling a daughter-in-law. Seeing this, Gu grew even more grateful to her. Each time the family received gifts, they would share half with the girl's mother. However, the girl still refrained from expressing any gratitude. On one occasion, Gu's mother fell ill in a private area of their home. She was in excruciating pain, crying out day and night. The girl visited her daily, tending to her needs, changing her bandages 3 or 4 times a day. Though Gu's mother felt uneasy, the girl never hesitated, seemingly undeterred by the filth. Gu's mother said, "Alas, our family could never find a daughter-in-law as wonderful as you. You attend to me tirelessly, like a true filial child. Overcome with emotion, she burst into tears. The girl consoled her, saying, "Your son is so filial, surpassing me in devotion by 100-fold." Gu's mother continued, "She's always coming and going at my bedside. This is beyond the duty of a filial son. Moreover, as an elderly person, I may enter the earth any day. My primary concern is leaving behind no descendants." As they discussed this, Gu entered the room. His mother, in tears, said to him, "We owe the girl so much. Don't forget, you must repay her kindness and virtue." Grateful for her sentiments, Gu bowed to the girl and thanked her. She responded, "I haven't thanked you for taking care of my mother, so why should you thank me?" This deepened Gu's admiration for her. However, the girl's demeanor remained serious, and Gu didn't dare approach her casually. One day, as the woman returned home, Gu gazed at her. She suddenly turned around, offering a radiant smile to Gu. Overjoyed, Gu followed her through her house's door. He wanted to get closer to her, and she didn't resist, willingly agreeing. Afterward, she warned Gu, this should only happen once and not be repeated. Gu didn't explicitly agree and went back home. The next day, Gu arranged to meet the woman again, but she sternly ignored him and walked away without a word. Despite this, she continued visiting Gu's house daily, and though they met each day, she never spoke kindly or showed a pleasant expression. Sometimes, when Gu tried to tell her a joke, she would respond coldly. Once, in a secluded place, the woman suddenly asked Gu, "Who was the young man who often came around a few days ago?" Gu informed her, and the woman continued, "That person acted inappropriately towards me multiple times. Since he's your friend, I didn't confront him. Please relay a message to him. If he behaves rudely to me again, he won't live to regret it." Later that evening, Gu shared the woman's message with the young man and cautioned him, saying, "You should be careful. She's not someone to mess with." The young man asked, "If she's untouchable, why did you cross that line?" Gu denied any wrongdoing. The young man continued, "If nothing happened, why would she reveal things that shouldn't be spoken between a man and a woman to you?" Gu struggled to respond. The young man then said, "Please tell her too, don't pretend. Otherwise, I'll spread the word about you everywhere." Infuriated, Gu turned red, and the young man left. One evening, Gu was sitting alone in his room when the woman suddenly arrived, saying with a smile, "Our connection remains unbroken. Isn't this fate?" Ecstatic, Gu hurriedly embraced her. Suddenly, they heard footsteps, causing both to panic. The young man entered the room, and Gu questioned, "What are you doing here?" The young man laughed and said, "I'm here to see the chaste ones." He then looked at the woman and added, "I won't hold it against you today." The woman's eyebrows furrowed, her face flushed, and without saying a word, she quickly opened her garment to reveal a pouch. From it, she pulled out a shining dagger. At the sight, the young man fled in fear, and the woman chased him out, yet he disappeared without a trace. She tossed the dagger into the air, and with a sound like cackling, a bright light akin to a rainbow emerged, followed by an object falling with a thud. Gu hastily illuminated it with a candle, discovering it was a white fox, its body separated into 2 pieces. He was horrified. The woman said, "This is your fond friend. I intended to spare it, but it refused to live." She sheathed the dagger. Gu led the woman back into the house, and she said, "The demon has been chased away. Please wait until tomorrow night." With that, she left. True to her word, the woman returned the following night, and they indulged in their desires. Gu inquired about her magic, and she responded, "It's not something you should know. It needs to remain secret. Revealing it might not bode well for you." Gu discussed the idea of marriage with the woman, and she said, "We've already shared a bed and household chores, and we're already like husband and wife. So, what's the point of discussing marriage?" Gu then asked, "Do you dislike my family's poverty?" The woman replied, While your family is indeed poor, is mine wealthy? Meeting tonight is simply because I pity your poverty." As she left, she told Gu, "Such private matters shouldn't happen too often. I'll naturally come when it's time. When it's not, your insistence won't make a difference." From then on, whenever they met, Gu often tried to engage her in private conversation, but the woman always avoided it. Yet, she continued to visit Gu's home, sewing clothes, cooking, and tending to household chores as if she were a true daughter-in-law. Several months later, the woman's mother passed away, and Gu spared no effort in assisting her with the funeral arrangements. From then on, the woman lived alone. Gu thought, with the woman living alone, he can easily go find her. So, he jumped over the wall into her courtyard, calling out to her through the window. After shouting for several times without receiving a response, he looked at the door, which was securely closed, yet there was no one inside. Gu thought to himself, perhaps the woman has another rendezvous. The next night, he went to check again, and it was the same as the previous night. He left a jade pendant on the windowsill and returned home. A day later, Gu and the woman met in Gu's mother's room. After leaving the room, the woman followed him out and said, "Do you suspect me? People have their own secrets, some of which cannot be casually shared with others. Today, I won't stop you from doubt, nor is it possible not to. But there's an urgent matter that you must help me with quickly." Gu asked what the matter was, and the woman said, "I've been pregnant for 8 months now, and I fear I'll give birth soon. My identity is still uncertain, so I can only give birth to the child, but I can't raise it. You should secretly tell your mother to find a wet nurse, claiming it's a baby that needs care. Don't mention that I'm the mother." After Gu agreed, he informed his mother. His mother smiled and said, "This girl is truly strange. She's unwilling to marry you, yet she has been secretly involved with my son." She happily agreed to their request, waiting until the child was born to decide what to do next. After another month had passed, the woman didn't visit Gu's house for several days in a row. His mother grew concerned and went to the woman's home to check on her. Seeing the tightly closed door and the silent courtyard, she called out for a long time until the woman, disheveled, emerged from the house. She invited Gu's mother inside, closed the door, and led her to see a baby on the bed. Astonished, Gu's mother asked, "How long has it been since the birth?" The answer came, 3 days. Gu's mother uncovered the baby, finding it to be a little boy with a broad forehead, incredibly adorable. Gu's mother joyfully exclaimed, "My child, you become a grandparent for me. With you alone, where will you find shelter?" The woman said, "I still have one unfinished matter, but I can't tell mother about it. When there's no one around at night, take the child away." Gu's mother returned home and recounted everything to her son. They both felt a sense of wonder. A few days later, in the middle of the night, the woman suddenly pushed open Gu's door, carrying a leather pouch. She smiled at Gu and said, "I finished my important matter, and from now on, we part ways." Gu anxiously asked why, and the woman explained, "I'll never forget your kindness in helping me care for my mother. I told you before that once is permissible, but twice isn't. I meant that repaying your kindness didn't involve living together. Instead, it was due to your family's poverty preventing marriage. I wanted to leave you with a legacy. Originally, I hoped to conceive once, but I unexpectedly menstruated again, so I broke the rule and slept with you again. Since I've now repaid your great kindness, my heart's wish has been fulfilled, and I have no regrets." Gu asked, "What's in the leather pouch?" She replied, "The head of my enemy." Opening it, they saw a gruesome sight. Gu was deeply shocked and inquired further. The woman explained, "I hadn't told you all along because of the sensitive nature of the matter, fearing leaks. Now that the critical task is accomplished, I can share it with you. I'm originally from Zhejiang province. My father was an official, holding the position of Sima. Due to enemy schemes, he was unjustly executed, and our family was destroyed. I fled with my mother, living and hiding for 3 years. I didn't immediately seek revenge because of my mother's presence. After my mother's death, I became pregnant, causing a delay. On those nights I wasn't home. I was surveying my enemy's residence and its entrances, fearing any mistakes. With that, she left Gu's room, turning back to add, "Take good care of our child. Your fate is short-lived, and this child can carry on your family line. It's late now, don't disturb your mother. I'm leaving." Gu was left in a desolate state, wanting to ask her where she was going. But the woman suddenly shimmered like a flash of lightning and disappeared. Gu stood there, dazed and unmoving, for a long time. At dawn, Gu shared everything with his mother, and both were left pondering. 3 years later, Gu did indeed pass away. His son, at the age of 18, passed the imperial examination and took care of his grandmother until her passing.